Hello, teachers of the National Catholic Educational Association. Conan O'Brien here. Now, I hope this isn't bad news, but yes, I was born and raised Catholic in Boston, so score 1 point for the other side. My apologies. I'm doing the best I can. I hope you all had a lovely Easter weekend. I just wanted to take a second to thank you teachers for your work and commitment to children. Now, you have a tough job in the very best of times, but this past year has been extremely difficult. As a Catholic and as a parent, I want to thank you for your hard work, your dedication, and your ingenuity during COVID. I wish you all the best. I hope you have a great conference. And please, if any of you see my mother Ruth at St. Lawrence's Church on Route 9 in Brookline, Mass., please tell her you saw me and I seem like a nice boy. Have a great conference and be happy I'm not there. I have sticky fingers. Things go missing when I'm around. Take care, God bless, and be well.
Well, hello, everyone. And how about that for a welcome, huh? We've had some great comedians. We had Jeannie Gaffigan yesterday. We had Conan O'Brien today. Someday we'll get Stephen Colbert to greet all of you. But such a wonderful inspiration to have such people. Thank you for all of the dedicated work that you do each and every day in your Catholic schools. So thank you for that. I'm Kevin Baxter. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at NCEA, and it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote, our final keynote for NCEA 2021. She is known to all of you, Kathy Mears, our interim president CEO. Everyone knows Kathy, but I want to make sure her introduction gets ample time here. So those of you who don't know, Kathy has been a lifelong Catholic educator. She's dedicated herself to Catholic school education, and she's a committed advocate for the value of Catholic schools. And she shares on social media, she shares everywhere she can about how important Catholic schools are to those students and families who are impacted by them. She's been a teacher, she's been a principal, she's been an assistant superintendent in the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. She was executive director of elementary schools at NCEA for her first go-around at NCEA, and then she became superintendent for the Archdiocese of Boston Catholic Schools. She came back in 2019 to NCEA as the chief program officer. And then in April of 2020, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, she took on the interim role of President CEO of NCEA. Kathy has led the organization in Catholic schools incredibly well over the past year. And so we are so grateful to her for her leadership and for all that she has brought to NCEA and to Catholic schools across the country. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy Mears.
Thank you, Kevin. I just wanted to say that this is going to be a very untraditional keynote. Kevin and I started together on July 1st, 2019 at NCEA. And because Kevin's going to be moving on to the University of Notre Dame, which they are so lucky to have him, I thought it would be good if Kevin and I did this together. But first, before we start, Kevin, I want to thank Grand Canyon University for all their sponsorship and especially of this keynote. And Grand Canyon, just so you know, they have a basketball coach and they went to the NCAA tournament for the first time this year. But their basketball coach is brother to the Baylor basketball coach who won the whole thing. So that's a family that knows their basketball. But we're grateful to Grand Canyon and all of our corporate sponsors who participated this week. So just wanted to give them a shout out before we get started.
Great. All right, so I have a question for you, Kathy, to kick us off. And as Kathy said, you know, we've had countless conversations over the last almost 2 years and talked a lot about Catholic schools. And so, but Kathy, as I was reflecting on this, I thought about your life over the last year as such a microcosm of the chaos and challenges that everyone has experienced across the country. You were named interim president CEO in April, and then we've had COVID, right? And that's all been disruptive. I know that was a temporary appointment that's gone on for now over a year. You tragically lost your dad during COVID. You had to mourn him with all those protocols in place. And then in January, you and your husband both got COVID, and you had a rough go at that for a while. And all the while, you're leading NCEA, which really through the greatest disruption that we've seen in education in our lifetimes. So Kathy, how do you feel?
Tired, but that would be said of almost everybody who's listening to us, Kevin. But it has been difficult. Last year, when we had our first day, something happened. I was on screen, and my husband walked in and kissed me on the forehead, and I heard from so many people who said what a nice gesture that was. And the truth of it was, we had just heard that morning that my dad was going into hospice, and he didn't know if I was going to be able to make it through the day, but he did. And Kevin was a good friend, because on the third day of conference on Thursday last year, I had to text Kevin and said, I have to go to Illinois right now. And Kevin said, go, I've got it. And Kevin just substituted for me like nothing. And so it's through faith and the love of my husband and friends and colleagues that we've made it through this year. And it's been a challenging year. COVID disrupted everything. But with all of that, we also had 2 grandsons born this year. So we've had the challenges and we've had the joys. And we're here in the Easter season, and it is joyous. And here's the good news, Kevin. Catholic education is doing better. We are taking this opportunity that this crisis has afforded us, and we are looking at new ways of doing things. We're looking at, you know what, I never want to go back and do this again. We did it before COVID, and now that we don't do it, I realize, why were we ever doing that? So we're changing things up, and our parents, for all of the things that sometimes we worry about with parents, our parents are really supportive of us, and that's great. And as you know, Kevin, when we asked Conan O'Brien, he immediately said yes. We asked Jeannie Gaffigan, she immediately said yes. Catholic educators are shining a light on everything that's good in education right now, and the world knows it. And they were very eager to be part of our conference to say good words and to give a shout out to our teachers and principals.
Indeed. I know both you and I have heard this really almost universally from all sectors, other education sectors too, about how incredibly well Catholic school educators responded to the shutdown last spring. We had stories across the country of schools converting over a weekend and doing that so quickly. And so just such a credit to all of the wonderful Catholic educators who are with us at NCEA and all those across the country who did such a tremendous job. And Kathy, what are maybe 3 things? I'm not going to hold you to 3 things, but what are 3 things you take away from your experience over the past year during COVID, and kind of how you've seen Catholic schools respond to it and adjust to it?
I think number 1 is that our teachers and principals are so resilient. They have met the challenge and exceeded, and they took all those punches and just rolled with it, and they've been tremendous, and that is really important. And I knew they were great, but I didn't know how great until this year. And honestly, I don't know if they knew how good they were until this year. And so I think that's one big takeaway. The other thing is, I think our agility, our structure of subsidiarity allowed our schools to really shine in this moment. Even when a diocese put out rules, they realized that each school had to respond to what was happening at their school. And that principle of subsidiarity has served us so well, because if this school needed to close down their 3rd grade, they closed down their 3rd grade. Everybody else just kept going on. And I think the 3rd thing is, we are true collaborators. Kevin, as you know, last spring, we held meetings almost every week with either teachers or principals or superintendents, and people just came and shared what they were doing. And that was tremendous, because I think we had more engagement from our members than probably ever in the history of NCEA, because on a weekly basis, one group or another was meeting with you and me, Kevin, to figure out what are other people doing? What can I learn? If I live in California, what can I learn from New Jersey? And they learn from each other. And I think that collaboration was key to our success. Because when one principal, one superintendent had the courage to say, we're going back, it gave the others confidence that they could go back too. And pretty soon, in June, Kevin and I thought like 50% of our schools were going to go back. by end of July, we're up to 75%. By September, we were at 85%. We've been there all year. Actually, it's up to about 90% now, are back full-time in person. And it's wonderful. It's truly wonderful. And again, I think those are the things that I learned, that we have resiliency, subsidiarity works, and we are collaborators.
Great. And I should let everybody know who's watching that if you have questions, please post those in the messaging board or in the questions section. I know you all know the drill by now, but Kathy can address any questions that you might have about NCEA. Kathy, something happened pretty dramatically when we went into COVID. We began the transition out of an office space that we had in Arlington, Virginia for many, many years. And of course, when COVID hit and a lot of companies were looking at working more remotely and this whole process, but talk a little bit about the thinking that went in. I know you talked with the board of directors about this and kind of thought things through on where things stand with regard to NCEA and its location and what the plan is kind of down the line.
So Kevin and I had a lot of conversations last spring. Well, I guess throughout the 2 years we've been working together, but especially last spring. NCEA took it a little bit on the chin last year financially we had to cancel Baltimore, and thank you to Baltimore for being willing to host and working with us so diligently. And we're sorry we didn't get to go there. And then we had to cancel Los Angeles. And conferences are the way we raise a lot of our funding for NCEA. So we took a little bit on the chin there, but we got to thinking and we're like, you know what, Kevin and I, we were both hired to work remotely. And then we asked John Reyes to help us last year put on NCEA Virtual, our first online conference. And John was in South Carolina. So I'm in Indiana, Kevin's in California, John's in South Carolina. We have people in Maryland and DC and Virginia, and we're like, this is working. Do people even know we're not in the office? And the truth of it was our membership did not know. Rent is not cheap in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. And this was a way to help stabilize our budget and honestly to make up for some of the funds that we lost from the convention. So we decided to go remote for a year. It has been great in our ability to hire people. Lots of people want to work for NCEA. Not everybody wants to live in Northern Virginia. It's beautiful there. Brian and I enjoyed it when we lived there, but it was, not everybody wants to live there. And so we've been able to hire people who said, if I can live at where I live now, I want to work for NCEA. And we've hired great people who can do that. So the decision was made, let's try it. So we're committed to trying it through July 1st of 2022. Lincoln, our next president CEO, will have the opportunity to talk to the board and make that decision. I think that it's great that Kevin's in California and John's now in Las Vegas, and that Annie is in Boston and Jill is in Michigan and I'm in Indianapolis, because really, if it weren't for COVID, we could be out visiting schools every week without the high price tag of having to fly to school, rent a car, doing all of that. And so we're excited about the possibilities of being across the country and being able to visit schools on a regular basis once the COVID restrictions are lifted and schools allow visitors back in. So we're trying it. It's a pilot project, but so far it's working well. And I guess people could put in the chat box if you've noticed any differences since we've gone virtual. I don't know. I do not hear from members that, oh, I wish you were wherever you were. I don't hear that. They don't know where we're at when we're talking. And I think that it's worked out okay.
Indeed. So there are questions about NCEA 2022, a year from now, Kathy.
Yes.
What are we thinking about where we're going to be and how that's going to look?
So we are very fortunate that we underline think, capitalize, italicize, bold letters. We think that we will be back in wonderful New Orleans, Louisiana for our conference there. We don't really know exactly how it's going to look. We have heard from many dioceses that they will not have money for travel for next year. So we know that, but we also know that people do want to gather together. But one thing that we have learned is NCEA knows how to put on a great virtual conference. We did it last year. Thank you, John Reyes, and to Scott and John and Cedric, who worked on that last year. And now you're working on this one this year, and we're so grateful to you. But we know how to do that well, and we engage more people. We don't have final numbers for this year, but it's probably around 8,500 to 9,000 people will engage with NCEA through this conference. We think that if we go to New Orleans, we won't have 9,000 people because not that many will be able to afford to go or can go. So we know that we will be in New Orleans that week. We will have some kind of conference that week. I don't know exactly what it will look like, but even more importantly, we will be online too. We're going to do both things. They may or may not be the same week, but we're going to do both things. And I think that's important because Kevin, you and I both know for the $1,000 watch party, that is tremendous value for your library of professional development. And if I were a principal, I could take any of the learning tracks and I have 4 faculty meetings, professional development done, maybe 5, just based on everything that's in our professional library. So we hope that schools recognize that value. And we hope that for those who can come together, we'll be able to do that.
That's great. Seeing some expressions of great that it's going to be flexible and that's wonderful.
Good.
This has been an incredible 3 days, Kathy. I think you and I both would attest to that. And the keynotes especially have just been spectacular. And I know our on-demand sessions are great and our live sessions have been great. But just to highlight, Father Mike, just incredible, and Gloria Purvis yesterday, and Byron Pitts today, and Brother Guy, and I'm going to forget everyone. But I guess my point is, it's been so inspirational to hear such incredibly accomplished people express such hope about Catholic schools and such admiration and vision almost to see where they can go. And yet, you and I both know we've come through a very challenging year in terms of school closures and enrollment, and we still have a lot of those challenges ahead of us. And so, I asked Byron Pitts this morning, and I'm just curious, how do you see hope? What do you see on the horizon that gives you hope in terms of the reality that we see with Catholic schools across the country today with COVID and all the other challenges that are present?
I do see hope. I think that I agree with Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II, that we are an Easter people and Alleluia is our song. I believe that. There's hope. Annie Smith, before she had a baby, the baby arrived safely. But before she went on maternity leave, she had done a survey of parents. And we found that between September 17th, which is the snapshot, the day for all the data that is put into this book. If you don't have the book, you need to get it. But the day that's put here is based on September 17th, 2020. From September 17th, 2020, we know enrollment grew 1.6%. That's not a huge growth, but that's growth. And I'm willing to bet last year from September 18th or whatever day the third Friday of September was of 2019 and April 4th of 2020 that we didn't grow 1.6%. So that's good. We grew, we're enticing more people to our schools. And Annie did another survey of about 1,400 parents who transferred their children to Catholic schools for the first time. 90% of them said they were going to return to Catholic schools. 90% satisfaction rate. That's tremendous. So those two things give me hope. The fact that our teachers are so resilient and willing to do what it takes to teach our children about Jesus, to teach our children about reading and writing and arithmetic. They're willing to go that extra mile. That gives me hope. I think that Catholic schools are here to stay. I think they're going to look different. I think they're going to be more virtual schools. I think that the book that you and Jill are writing about micro schools are going to be really important because I think our schools will look different. But Kevin, the whole thing is schools going to look different everywhere. Public schools are going to look different. More homeschooling is going to come in, but Catholic education is going to play a role in all that. And our people are ready for it. And we're ready to go.
That's great. And I think you're right. So on that point, you mentioned earlier, one of the things we did when COVID first happened that was so edifying, I know both to you and me, we had Zoom calls, and we 1 week we do it with superintendents and assistant superintendents, and 1 week we do it with principals. We even broke out the principals to high school principals and elementary principals, and it was we did that for a couple of months, and it was probably the best part of our professional lives during that time, because we learned so much hearing from them. And kind of, how do you think Zoom has transformed kind of how we engage? And obviously this is beyond just Catholic schools, but specifically within the Catholic school framework, how has Zoom changed how we engage and how we interact and how we maybe network with each other across the country?
I think Zoom has been a real gift to us. Zoom, I hate it. I'm so tired of seeing myself on camera, and I understand I can now take myself off. I just never think to do it until I'm in the middle of something. Like right now, I'd like to take myself off, but I will keep going. But Zoom has allowed us to communicate like never before. And while we are all tired of it, I think all of us realizes it's changed everything. I was in Boston when my first grandchild was born. FaceTime changed our lives because we could see that baby every time. So much so that the first time I talked to Thomas on the phone without the face, he cried because he didn't understand why he could hear grandma but couldn't see her. So, you know, that's how much it's embedded into our society that we see the face when we're talking. I have seen such true collaboration from our principals and superintendents and teachers from across the country. It's here to stay. NCEA is committed to using Zoom and other tools to make sure that we connect people. Those are the two things I've always been taught about NCEA, that we convene people and we connect people, and Zoom lets us do both. And so we will continue to use this. Those meetings, I'm thinking of Marianne in Maine. She keeps saying, Kathleen, when's another meeting? I want to talk to people. So we will continue to do the meetings probably on a quarterly basis so that we can connect the people and let them have the opportunity to talk. As you and I know, Kevin, we threw out one question on those meetings and then we just sat back and listened because everybody just connected. I also think the wonderful thing is, principals or superintendents in Florida have invited us to their meetings, California, Ohio, the Intermountain region. By them allowing us to come to their meetings, again, I feel like we're as connected as ever to the field. And that's a great thing for NCEA. And it's good for our schools. The data that you and I gathered, Sister Dale was able to use when advocating for our schools on Capitol Hill. We could literally say, well, sister, this diocese, and this diocese are doing these things. She took that directly to Capitol Hill, and that mattered. You and I both know that it was tough getting Catholic schools included in some of the funds that we are enjoying through the COVID legislations that has passed under both the Trump administration and the Biden administration. But we were included, and that's because we had those meetings and because people took time to fill out surveys, that we had data that we could give to Sister Dale and USCCB. So when they advocated for us, that we had the materials and the research that they needed. So again, I know you probably, if you're listening, get tired of filling out surveys. Those are important. And if we're going to give NCEA a grade for advocacy this year, it's an A+. We were able to collect more data this year than we've ever been able to collect. We were able to put in forms that would help with passing of legislation and for the inclusion of Catholic schools in that legislation. And if you for somehow do not know Sister Dale, you need to know Sister Dale McDonald, because she is a rock star and she represents you so well to both the bishops at USCCB and to those on Capitol Hill and those who work at the education department. So we will keep all of that going, and we need your help to do it. But when you send us that data, we know our responsibility to use it for you, and we are.
The advocacy piece is so important. You're absolutely right. And we had a question from Claudia Tice actually about this in terms of going from the part-time campus instruction to full-time, but the constraints are still there in terms of social distance and maybe equipment and PPE and all of these different things. And so I think one of the things I see the question and what the answer I think of is EANS funding. And I think all of the tremendous funding that's available, more funding than than we've ever had in our history for Catholic schools. John Reyes, I think, estimates that probably $800 million or so across the country could be available for Catholic schools alone through this last round of COVID relief. So the advocacy piece, I think, is so important. Sister Dale, obviously, all the work that she does, the USCCB, but just the fact that there are those resources there. And we obviously have the website. I know our great friend John Reyes is listening. Maybe could post the link to the website that you can contact our partners who are doing this work, who can help you with different resources that you might need, because we know schools are struggling with some of these costs.
Absolutely. And also just a shout out to our college partners, members of CHESS, because colleges are really trying to step up. Catholic colleges are really trying to step up to help Catholic schools across the country. You know, when I was in Boston College, Emmanuel College, Stonehill, they were all great partners with us. I'm forgetting one of the colleges, and I'm going to get binged on it. Oh, Tony's their president, and I cannot think of the college. I'm sorry, it will come to me. But anyway, Catholic colleges across the country are doing great things. Creighton is working with NCEA. Villanova is working with NCEA. LMU is working with NCEA. The University of Notre Dame is working with NCEA. And with you there, I know that relationship is going to remain strong. Boston College, the Marian University here in Indianapolis, Grand Canyon, not a Catholic college, but a college that's willing to work with us to help our members. All of these schools are providing great resources that you can call them up and find out about, and maybe those will be resources that will help you with learning losses or other things that you can spend Eames money on. So, you know, we have great corporate partners who help us so much. But the colleges, I think, are really stepping up this year because they too understand the importance of pre-K through 12 Catholic education.
So Kathy, it's not really a question, but it's a statement, but it gives me great pride, and I know it'll give you great pride too, recognizing how intentional we've been with regard to speakers and sessions. And I go back to even CLS, right? CLS and convention. And it just talks about hoping we can continue to move forward to face the challenges of social injustice, inclusion, diversity. Talk a little bit about what happened last summer. Obviously, kind of the murder of George Floyd, I think, kicked this off, but NCEA really did make some choices that last summer and really moving forward, and maybe talk a little bit about that and the influence of those tragedies on how we've tried to frame our work over the last year.
You're right. And Kevin, I remember when George Floyd was killed, that we had prayer. I don't know if people realize that NCEA team meets almost every day for prayer. We gather and pray together. And we prayed, and we had some painful moments ourselves as a staff. We have a diverse staff, and people talked about their own experiences. And that was a moment for all of us to learn. And then we made a commitment as an organization that, you know, we cannot be quiet about this. And so we put out a statement, a letter, and met with some criticism for doing it, but it always still felt right. And we also put together a group that hasn't been as active this second semester for a variety of reasons, but we're still going to work with them because we said we need to make sure that we are listening, that we are doing what we can to help our students of colors, white students, all students, that they all know that they are loved, that they're made in the image and likeness of God. And we brought together a panel discussion in early June. I think it was like within a week or 10 days. And Kevin and I were online, and it was 7 o'clock Eastern time when we held it. And the numbers just kept ticking up, the people joining us. And we got so many comments from people saying, I was so proud to be a member of NCEA because you didn't shy away. You faced the issue head on, and you want to help us to do a better job of educating our students about what racism is, what it means, and how we can be better knowing that all children, all of us, are created in the image and likeness of God. And what does that mean? If we're going to live that out, what's it mean? What's it look like? How do we do that? And so we're still working on it. We are a work in progress, but we have a group that advises NCEA on these topics, and we are really trying to listen to them. And Kevin, I know that you agree with me, but we have been very purposeful in making sure that our speakers come from a diverse backgrounds, different parts of the country. We literally, in my office, I mark on the map, so I know where they're from. So I make sure that we're having that diversity that we need. Geography, ethnicity, race, every kind of, because we all have different stories to tell, and we have to be aware of that. And so NCEA really, we pivoted a little bit after Mr. Floyd's death and said, we can do better in this area, and we're going to. And I said, not every member was happy about it, but I think that it was the right thing to do. I feel that very strongly is the right thing to do. And again, NCEA said, this is what we're going to do, and we did it.
That's great. That's great. We have a little less than 10 minutes left. I wanted just to briefly let everyone know, you and I have had the blessing of being in calls with our friends at the University of Notre Dame with bishops across the country, every region. And these were meetings really just to get the bishops' feedback on COVID and how their schools have responded and how they've responded and the challenges that they've seen. And so I don't know if you want just to share a little bit about how those calls have gone, what has struck you in terms of the feedback that we've heard from different parts of the country from the clergy and from the bishops.
Right. I think we're about 80% through those calls. We've talked to about 80% of the bishops. Every single group, teachers and principals, listen to this. Every single group has said how hard you have worked. Every single group is grateful to you for your work. And that's really important. They've absolutely been in awe of you and everything you've done, and honestly worried about you, worried that that you're working so hard. They're worried that you're going to be burned out. They're worried that you're not taking care of yourselves. And that's true of the superintendents too. So that just stands out, because every single time the first thing they mention is how hard teachers and principals and superintendents are working, and that we have to take care of them. The other thing is that I think that everybody knows this, but they want to make sure that, as Bishop Daly said this morning, that we're not just raising good people, but we're raising Catholics, that we are helping people to know Jesus and to worship as Catholics. And so, I feel very strongly that our schools understand that and are doing that. And it's really important that they do that. And they're committed to it. And I know that the people listening work on that every single day. And, Kevin and I say that and support you in that. The other thing I would say that I've learned about this is bishops want the best for our children. They clearly believe Catholic schools are the way to do it. I don't think they always know how best to help Catholic schools in all aspects. They are very, very busy people. And sometimes I think that they want to do more, but they don't know what to do. So, Kevin, maybe you can add to that, but those are the things that I've gotten from the meetings. And I'm grateful to the University of Notre Dame for setting those up and for including NCEA in those calls.
Yeah, I think you shared beautifully, and I think you're absolutely right that it's been universal, the expression of gratitude and appreciation for the wonderful principals, teachers, superintendents out there. There's not been one call that hasn't been expressed openly and widely. I think, interestingly, I think the challenges that they would state were leadership, trying to grow leadership, future leadership, anticipating that. I think that's something we have to continue to think about in terms of how best to ensure that we've got future leaders ready to take on the helm. And so I think for dioceses out there, university partners, NCEA itself, trying to think about how do we really identify those future leaders who are going to have to take on superintendent positions and principal positions and those types of things. So that was definitely something that was expressed by the bishops.
That's true. And one thing that we heard and that we tell them is the personal invitation is still the best. Tap someone on their shoulder and say, I think you'd be a good principal, because that works. People respond to those invitations. So, but we've been telling bishops that they should tap people on the shoulders too. So the
They
call
share it with us, and we tell them to share it with all of you.
That's right.
That's right. So we do have a question here too about how do you look after your teachers in a better way? And I'm wondering if this is maybe in response to COVID especially. I know that's been a challenge in terms of trying to ensure that teachers it's such a potential for burnout. And we know that's an every year occurrence, but of course with COVID and remote and hybrid and all these different things, that caring for teachers is an important piece for leaders.
Absolutely. And I would just say people need to be appreciated most of all. You know, having the kids write thank you notes, having parents write thank you notes, it matters. So I think showing gratitude is one of the best ways you can do it. And then if you're the principal, you know, you can always have a fire drill and just let everybody stay outside for 15 minutes. That was always my favorite thing to do. You know, the kids would actually start asking, so is this a fire drill where we get to stay outside for 15 minutes? But it, you know, just make sure there's not a test going on in 8th grade like I did one time, because that was a problem. But for other than that, it's just appreciate them. I think that they need to know that people do care what they've done. Share the Conan O'Brien tape, share Jeannie Gaffigan, share Gloria Purvis, Father Mike. Any of these speakers we've had this week are so inspirational. Share their message and let them know, you know, I know how hard you work and we care. And you can let them know that people at NCEA know how hard they work and we care.
We only have about 2 minutes left and probably not enough time for this question, but thinking about, you mentioned the book that Jill, Annabelle, and I have coming out on micro schools. Just in terms of what we maybe need to frame our thinking in terms of the next 5 years or so, in terms of Catholic schools, I think that the basic premise of that book is that we don't want to use enrollment as the primary metric for gauging whether a school is viable or not. We think that that's a false. It's a false metric to just use enrollment, that there are other criteria, obviously faith formation, academic excellence. So thoughts on that, Kathy? Again, I'm not giving you much time, but just thoughts on that approach and how we can maybe take that from NCEA's perspective.
People need to read the book and look for the PD, because we are going to offer PD and opportunities to talk to Kevin and Jill about this. But enrollment is not the only way to measure success. I graduated from the smallest public high school in the state of Illinois. Enrollment was not the way to measure success for that school. It is not the way we want to measure our success. But I will tell you, many people only want to look at enrollment. And in a church with a declining membership, that's a tough thing. So I think that we need to all define our success by how many children know Jesus. Let's start there. If 100% of our students know Jesus, you're pretty successful. So let's start there. And I think that it's really important that we all think about that. How do we want to define our success, and quit letting other people to define it for us and only using enrollment as the measurement?
Kathy, let me just take this opportunity to thank you so much for your incredible leadership, especially over the last year with all the things that have been happening and everything that you've gone through. You've just been such a great inspiration, I know, to all of the NCEA staff, to me personally, and I know to the Catholic school educators who are joining us. And so thank you so much for that, for your dedicated service to Catholic schools. And we continue to keep you in our prayers and keep you in our thoughts. And God bless.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it. And so I have a bunch of thank yous. So don't walk away, people, because these are important things that need to be said. So first of all, just so you know, we talked about NCEA 2022 in New Orleans being in person. We're going to have 3 regional meetings for CLS that will be in person too. So that's a great thing. The Leadership Summit will happen in St. Louis, in Philadelphia, and Salt Lake City. So you can meet us in St. Louis on October 10th and 11th, in Philadelphia the following week, or Salt Lake City the following week. There will also be an online virtual component to these meetings. So that's all going to happen. And then PD, we have lots of PD that's going to be happening, including some STREAM. We're going to have some micro schools and a book study using Kevin and Jill's book. We're going to address learning loss because that's really important for us. And then advancement, because we all know that we have to continue our efforts in institutional advancement. And yes, for all those who want to know, we're going to talk to Byron Pitts about making that commercial. So we're going to see if we can get that done. The other thing is, I really want to thank the NCEA staff. When they asked me to be interim superintendent, and this is true. I said, well, I need to talk to my husband. And they said, well, can you do it in 10 minutes? Because we need an answer in 10 minutes. So I called my husband. So first thanks goes to him because he always encourages me. Then I want to thank Wade and Tina, Wade Marshall and Tina Brown. They do membership services. They are awesome. You want to buy a book, Wade's the person to see. Sister Dale, no one like her in Catholic education. She's a gem, and her advocacy work, you guys know what she's done for us. I need to thank Margaret, who writes all the words that get put out in our emails and all of those things. She does that along with Scott and B does every bit of artwork that you see that comes out of NCEA. B does that work, B Ruiz, and so we're so grateful to her. Our techno team keeps growing, but Cedric, Scott, Matthias, John Logan, they've all been involved with that this year. I also want to thank Heather Gossert, because Heather Gossert always says that she didn't know anything about technology till she met me, but that's not really true. But Heather was our guinea pig. If Heather could figure out how to do cadence, then we were like, okay, this is going to be good. Heather, I love you. Then Brother Stephen, who keeps me calm. I so appreciate him. And Sterling, who works with our corporate partners. And then finally, to John Reyes and Jill and to Annie, thank you so much. And then finally to Kevin. You guys do not know how much Kevin has helped me and how much I will miss him when he moves on to Notre Dame. But I take solace in the fact, Kevin, that you're going to impact all of these new principles, and that's a great thing. And it's a great thing for Catholic education, and I will be for you. And like I said, Kevin is only going to Notre Dame so he can be 2 hours from Jill and 2 hours from me. So that I'm sure is a big part of it. In 2013, Pope Francis had he went to the World Youth Conference, and he told the young people that they should have courage, go forward, and make noise. And I'm going to suggest to you those words apply to Catholic education. You have been tremendous all year. You have been courageous. Keep having courage. Don't be afraid. We can do this together. We're going to keep moving forward. Who knows what the future will bring, but I am confident that you will meet the challenge as well. And that is great. And then make noise. Let's talk about how great we are doing, and let's set our own measures of success. If we can do that, we will be successful. Thank you for being members of NCEA. Thank you for joining us during this conference. And if you have any questions, feel free to email Kevin or me and we will get back to you. But thank you so very, very much for everything you do for the church, and most importantly for our students and their families.
This past year has been one of unimaginable challenges, but we Catholic educators across the United States have risen to the occasion and exceeded all expectations to continue to provide Catholic education and faith formation to our families. That's why we are so excited to welcome you to New Orleans, the birthplace of Catholic education in the United States, for one big party and maybe a little learning at the 2022 NCEA Conference. From our iconic St. Louis Cathedral to the natural beauty and majesty of the mighty Mississippi River, we are waiting for you to join us for our music, food, and all-around joie de vivre. So come join us in New Orleans for the 2022 NCEA Conference. We'll save y'all some crawfish.
I'm very honored to be with you as this year's annual NCEA convention comes to a close. Although you have not been able to gather physically in this most challenging year, I hope you have found this virtual gathering to be a time of great renewal. Your theme for this year has been Ignite, Unite, Inspire. I pray that the fire of faith and God's calling has been reignited within you, that you have been strengthened by the amazing energy of this virtual gathering, and that the inspiration you have received enlightens and guides you in your very challenging work. This past year has challenged us in so many ways. We have seen with much greater clarity how much this world needs God and the vision that faith alone can offer us. It is a vision that reminds us that we are not alone, not ever. The vision that teaches us that we are part of a great, diverse, and gifted human family with God as our Heavenly Father and Jesus as our brother. Therefore, each person is due love and respect, no matter from whence they come, the language they speak, the color of their skin, whether they are within their mother's womb or lying in a bed within a nursing home. If they are poor, neglected, or alone, they are most precious of all in the eyes of God. How important it is that our brothers and sisters learn this lesson. The well-being of the human race depends upon it. And this recognition of the great dignity of every human person is the foundation of a world free of war and filled with hope. But no one is in a better position to inculcate these truths than you, our Catholic school teachers. The value of a Catholic school education was imprinted upon me in a way I will never forget when I was in 4th grade. I was in a public school because in my small town at that time, the new Catholic school began with 5th grade. On a fateful day in 1963, word came over the PA that the president, President Kennedy, had been shot. Later, word came that he had died. Everyone was in shock, but our math class continued. It struck me that if I was in a Catholic school, we could stop and pray. But God was not present in our public school. And so there was nothing that could be done to support the president and his family or to respond to the pain we were all feeling in our hearts. Lasting life lessons are learned and lifelong habits are formed in Catholic schools. Fundamental truths are learned when a person is young. Change becomes so much more difficult with age. So teach them. Teach them by the witness of your lives. Teach them their academic subjects. Catholic schools have always done a superior job of that. But in every class, in every interaction, show them the path of faith, the power of love. Catholic school teachers, don't underestimate the impact of your witness. In collaboration with parents, you can change the world one child's life at a time. Let us pray. O loving Father, look upon each teacher gathered with us here. I thank you for loving them. I praise you for calling them. I beseech you to work in them for the sake of your beloved children and youth. Your Son instructed his disciples, "Let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such as these belong the kingdom of heaven." What an honor to be chosen to guide them to you. What a privilege we have to reveal you to them. What a joy it is to teach and form them for life here and hereafter. Lord, it has not been an easy year. Our children have suffered, and so have we. Some of our companions in this holy work have gone home to you. Some have fallen by the wayside. Our service, always challenging, has at times seemed impossible, but you have been with us to guide us. You have shown us a strength beyond our own. And so we entrust ourselves to you once again. Reignite the flame within us. Unite us in your service. Inspire us to move forward, strengthen and renewed for your service. Continue the good work you have begun in us through Jesus Christ, our Lord.